Others call me Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years. 22,500 times longer than you. I don't really need people, but people need me. Yes, your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter. Or worse. But I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. My oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests, they all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other. Your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
Climate change. It's real, it's serious, and it's up to us to solve it. In the last 2 decades, we've experienced 14 of the hottest 15 years on record. By 2050, drought and chronic water shortages. Third. Already, Germany generates 27% of its electricity from renewables, with a goal of 80% by 2050. Denmark has shown it can produce more wind energy than it can use, and England is building the world's biggest offshore wind farm. Communities large and small are taking steps. A new public building in Mexico City has an exterior that breaks down air pollutants, erasing the effects of 1,000 cars each day. Paris installed street tiles that harvest energy from foot traffic. Other cities are paving streets with smog-eating concrete and sidewalks with recycled materials. Individuals can make a difference too, through the choices we make every day. If every American driver drove 10 miles less each week, it could eliminate more than 100 billion pounds of carbon from the air each year. New innovations are making important strides possible, and more are on the way, but we can't wait. Reimagining our world's energy future will take a shared sense of urgency from countries, companies, cities, and all of us. Working together, real change is possible. Learn more at natgeo.com/climate.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are now live on our Green Convergence GCFB page. We will begin with our Zoom etiquette, followed by our opening prayer and the Philippine National Anthem. Thank you and makakalikasang Pasko po sa ating lahat. formally open our Kamayan episode, let us welcome Sister Marcelita Catarina DC, trustee of Green Convergence, for our opening prayer.
Let's put ourselves in the holy presence of God as we say, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. We stand before you, Holy Spirit, as we gather together in your name, with you alone to guide us. Make yourself at home in our hearts. Teach us the way we must go and how we are to pursue it. We are weak and sinful. Do not let us promote disorder. Do not let ignorance lead us down the wrong path, nor partiality influence our actions. Let us find in you our unity, so that we may journey together to eternal life and not stray from the way of truth and what is right. All this we ask of you, who are at work in every place and time, in the communion of the Father and the Son, forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Sang-awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, helas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatak tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong pagkaw, ay hinatang tulang awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang islang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay di magtitindig. Luman ang araw ng walhagin pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hindi kaya ng pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Good afternoon! Isang makakalikasang pagbati sa lahat. Thank you for joining the year-end episode of Kamayan para sa Kalikasan, a public forum held every third Friday of the month since March 1990. This is our 402nd installment, brought to you by Green Convergence for Safe Food, Healthy Environment, and Sustainable Economy, or simply Green Convergence, or GC, and Kamayan Restaurant. Today we are tackling the question of whether it is possible for the Philippines to transition to 100% renewable energy. That promises to be a very interesting and stimulating discussion. As announced earlier, especially with our wonderful guests, I have to add. As announced earlier, we are currently live streaming at the Green Convergence Facebook page. Later, a video recording will be uploaded to the GC website and the GC YouTube channel. I'm your moderator, Marie Marciano, a member of GC and a lifetime worker, advocate, and volunteer for various causes and organizations, particularly for environmental protection, justice, and human rights. Is David here already?
Not yet po.
Okay, in that case, I will I will have to postpone introducing our co-moderator. Moving on, let's begin our forum with the opening remarks of another valuable pillar of GC. My good friend, she is an environmental educator, a Laudato Si animator, a longtime trustee, and the current president of Green Convergence. Please welcome Miss Victoria M. Segovia. Vicky, good morning.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Marie.
Sorry, good afternoon. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to the 402nd and the last episode of Kamayan sa Kalikasan for 2023.
Yeah.
For more than a century, Our planet Earth has depended on fossil fuels for our energy needs. Fuels for our cars, elevators, electricity, businesses, etc. But to our dismay, this has also given us the problem of greenhouse gas that have caused global warming. Thus, the drive to develop other sources of energy that is friendly to our planet. COP28, held last week in Dubai, claims that an agreement signals the beginning of the end of the fossil fuels era. I don't know really what that means. But COP28 calls on parties to take action in tripling renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency improvements by 2030. That is why we are so lucky today that we have speakers from Denmark and Germany to share with us how we can learn from them to reach our target. For years, our scientists, researchers, and leaders have tried to develop eco-friendly alternatives. I think it is safe to say that Europe leads the march to renewable energy. I remember that in 2017, when I had a chance to travel to Italy, down to Portugal, and on to Spain, I saw the thousands of windmills dotting the landscape of Europe. They predict that by 2030, half of Europe's electricity will come from renewable energy sources, with Denmark tagged as the greenest country in the world in 2022. Germany, France, and Italy have also pledged to hit net zero emissions by 2045. That is why we are so lucky to have them in our Kamayan session today. I think we can learn a lot from them how we can reach our own target. We have also with us our representatives from the Department of Energy and the ICEC to share with us how we can attain our goal for the survival of our planet. So, I hope everyone will learn a lot and enjoy today's Kamayan session. Let me end by taking the opportunity to greet everyone happy holidays. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you very much, Vicky. I am sorry to announce, though, that our representative from Germany won't be able to make it. So sayang, di ba? We would benefit really from their experience.
Nag-oo
So,
sila.
thank you very much, Vicky. Before we present our first speaker, allow me to give you a brief description of the program flow so that everyone knows what to expect. Today, we are changing our format a bit to accommodate our very busy speakers' time availabilities. We will listen to the first speaker now and hold a mini Q&A for the said speaker. And then we will revert to the usual format where we listen to our other resource speakers without interruption. That means no questions will be entertained after each presentation. If you have questions during the talk, it is advisable to write them down so that you won't forget. The next part is the open forum. Here you can ask your questions to be answered directly by the resource speakers. Your questions can be directed to any of them. And now we're supposed to have guidelines from our late co-moderator. So I'll just do it. For short guidelines. To avoid distracting ambient noise, all participants are requested to keep your microphones on mute for the duration of the webinar, except during the open forum when participants are welcome to speak and ask questions. Meantime, you may use the chat box for comments, reactions, or messages. Okay? I hope that's clear enough. So, Now we are all set to introduce our first speaker. We are fortunate to have with us a Danish professional, foreign service officer, currently serving as ambassador of Denmark to the Philippines and Palau. He taught human rights and constitutional law for several years at the University of Copenhagen. He has also worked as a consultant on writing and communication. Throughout his career, this highly knowledgeable gentleman has written political articles and speeches for different Danish cabinet ministers, including the Prime Minister, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Minister for Development Cooperation, and the Minister of Finance. Friends, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ambassador Franz Michael Melvin. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, and it's great to be here, and I hope everybody can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
That's great. I have a presentation with me. I don't know if that can come to the screen. Is that possible?
Yes, it's there.
Fantastic. in bright green lettering. It's great. So it's great to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me. I've been looking forward to today, and also looking forward to whatever questions you may have. I have been asked to talk about how Denmark sort of came to be where it is today, and some of our current policies. But I'll of course try to relate that to the situation that the Philippines is confronting, and what the Philippines may be able to learn from some of Denmark's own experiences as they have developed. So if I could have the first slide, please. So I think it's good to remind ourselves where we came from. This is not just unique from Denmark. A lot of countries previously were extremely dependent on oil and oil imports, and that actually is also true for the Philippines. And for Denmark, it was 92% dependent on all our energy back in 1972 when the oil crisis hit, and oil went from being a very cheap, easily available commodity to being a much more expensive and actually also a difficult to get commodity. And that did spark a revolution in Danish politics in Denmark, amongst Danish people, on how we thought about energy. Denmark did not have any available energy resources itself. So of course, this put a lot of pressure on the state to try to find out how we're going to manage this difficult situation. We are also very export dependent. And as you will know, because this is actually a current problem in the Philippines, high energy prices does impact your competitiveness for your industry. And since Denmark exports a huge amount of its GDP, it was a severe economic blow for Denmark. So it was really a shock to the system. You can see this picture. I remember this myself from 72. We actually had it once more in 74, at the second oil crisis, so to say. One of the measures we took was we didn't drive cars on Sundays, and this is empty highway outside of Copenhagen, because in fact we're not driving any cars, just to save oil. Next slide, please. Anyway, two countries stood out in the aftermath of the first oil crisis, and that was Japan and Denmark. Both countries made very deep changes. Japan, of course, also at that time, a country heavily dependent on exports and heavily dependent on oil imports. So you could say, you know, two countries that sort of faced like challenges. There were other countries who also did that, but they just didn't take these kind of policy measures that we saw Japan and Denmark do. But there was also a very important difference between the two countries. And that was that the key to the success stories of Japan and Denmark became energy diversification. We didn't rely on one thing, relied on a number of sources. And this is actually an important message or learning for the Philippines, in my view, which is if you want a robust, resilient, strategically sound energy supply, you need to have a diversified energy supply. You can't just bet on one thing. Sometimes when people talk about energy, and this has become much more prevalent in the last years, it's as if somebody can wave a magic wand and say, you know, let's just do this or let's just do that, and then all our problems are solved. Energy systems are more complex than that. And Japan and Denmark, through a combination of energy savings, which are important and will remain important for quite a while, there will be a lot more and a lot cheaper energy in the sort of medium long term, which will lead to some changes maybe when it comes to energy saving. But for now, energy savings are the first fuel, as President Marcos correctly has said, and diversification really led the way for both Japan and Denmark. And we were highly successful. Both countries managed decoupling rising energy consumption from rising economic growth. Denmark has had a great economic success story over the last 50 years. We did struggle a lot in the 70s and 80s before we got these things sort of up and running and abated some of these crisis elements. But really, we've been able to have a very, very solid growth and high productivity in spite of these challenges because of the policies we implemented back then. So let's look at what it was short term. So reducing energy consumption, I mentioned that. Reducing oil, so by diversifying into other kinds of fuels, having more suppliers. And then we started investing a lot in research and development into renewables. And that became a success story. It didn't become a success story back in 72 because it takes time to develop these things, but it did become a success story for us. And we already talked about the decoupling. And the whole idea was to make Denmark self-sufficient in energy. And we did succeed in doing that. That came about sort of at the mid and 80s. We became self-sufficient, reducing our strategic vulnerability. There's another thing we did, which you don't talk a lot about in the Philippines, so this is important for me. It's a difficult word. It's called sector coupling. Now, sector coupling is when you combine your power, that's electricity production, with heating or cooling systems. So don't you just do one thing, but you have energy plants which also do the other thing, or you do it within the system. And this sector coupling increases the system efficiency a lot. I mean, a lot. It's like that is almost a magic wand. And it is surprising to me that it has taken so long for the rest of the world to catch up here. They are catching up now. There are lots of countries that do a lot more sector coupling than we used to see. It's become very prevalent in Europe. In China, they are extending this a lot. They're doing it even in the US, Canada, etc. I mean, it is spreading, but a lot more countries should do more here. And in the Philippines, it's not happening at all. So you can gain a lot because there's a lot of wasted energy when you produce energy, you know, like heating, and heating is also cooling. So, and that can be transformed. And in Denmark, we have, because in Denmark we need heating, we have huge systems of water reservoirs, underground water reservoirs, supplying heating and hot water to households. Some of these run for over 100 kilometers and supply like the entire Copenhagen wider area in a combined system. And again, this is for pricing reasons. It lowers the costs a lot, and it also increases system efficiency. Next slide, please. Now, there are a lot of countries who have copied the Danish way forward, so to say, and that's great. We had a huge, I'd say, we had a directed influence on EU on EU energy policies, and that, of course, had a big impact on the European Union, the countries that were living around us. And the case has been studied several times. Now, you can't just copy the footwork. It doesn't work like that. There are reasons why we succeeded in doing this, and there are reasons why some other countries, even though there was maybe a technical understanding of what this could bring, that explains why it took for some countries quite a long time, or for some countries not even to go there, which is the case for the Philippines. So let's study this, because this is a really important other point for this day. In Denmark, we built political consensus around our energy policies, and that became tremendously important. I cannot overstate. You need to make sure to have political consensus, because the timeline that you need to reshape your energy systems is not about one presidency. Here you have 6 years presidency. It's not even about two presidencies. We're talking about 20, maybe even 30 years of policies, and this is not the case in the Philippines. You do not have that strong political consensus we have in Denmark. In Denmark, over 90% of all politicians will raise their hands and vote for whichever government is in place. Their energy policies, because this is constantly being debated. There are constantly broad-based political agreements on, okay, this is the way we're going to manage our energy policies. And I feel, if I have one advice to all of you who want to do the right thing for the Philippines, you need to go out and build political consensus. And unfortunately, the world has become such, and this is not just, something in the Philippines or in Denmark, but if you look across the world, what has happened is that energy policies, from being a more technical discussion about efficiency and cost, has become highly politicized. It's as if you are pro-nuclear, then you must hate renewables, or if you're pro-renewables, you must hate, other kinds of energy. That is not a sound way of thinking of energy systems. Every country is different. Every country has to look at what its options are and build from its own strengths the best possible, most cost-effective, most resilient energy system for itself. And there will be good news just in a short moment for the Philippines here. We also had very strong public-private partnerships. This was very important. It also helped mobilize research for industry. This worked out very well in Denmark, and it's also part of what helped us create a success story here. Again, in the Philippines, you have some challenges in this area, not because privatization in the Philippines didn't go right, but because you're stuck in a privatization process which doesn't accommodate restructuring of your energy policies, or at least makes it more complex to achieve. Whereas in Denmark, we have a lot of flexibility in our system because we have sort of approached some of these questions in a different way. Just name it. So in the core elements, as said before, efficiency, the Filipino people, they deserve abundant, reliable, and cheap energy. And none of the three are good, for themselves. You need all three. So abundant, reliable, and cheap. And they don't have any of them right now. So you could say anything that improves just one of those metrics is good, but you should go there, and you can. That's a good story that I promised I'd come back to just in a moment. You should diversify your energy production, really important, and then the sector coupling. Now, for Denmark, what we are doing right now, we have the most ambitious climate policy in the world. We're going to reduce CO2 emissions with 70%, 70%, by 2030. That's in 6 years from now. 70% in 1 decade until the end of this decade. so in 6 years from now. It's a massive undertaking, and we are working really hard and making huge investments to make that happen. Now, there are two pillars this is standing on. So one is a massive extension of renewable energy. We're building lots of solar farms, building lots of windmills, we're extending biomass. We are doing even more sector coupling than we have already. It's on the margins for Denmark because we have done so much already, but even on the margins, we're trying to get in. The other part of the story, and this is important for the Philippines too, is we're going to have a lot more energy consumed as electricity. Okay, so if you look at the total mix, very often when we look at renewables or whatever, there is a tendency that we focus on just the current use of electricity. But in Denmark, we're going to increase the amount of electricity in the total energy consumption towards about 80 to 85%. And that's going to make a big difference. So the goal by 2030, I think, is about, I don't remember if the goal is 75% or it's 80%, but they're going to push through, and they're going to push further through that. And we will end up somewhere between 85 and 90% electrification. Electricity is the Rolls Royce of energy, has lots of advantages, it has some drawbacks too. So let's continue the story. Next slide, please. So I promised there would be good news for the Philippines also, and there is. Yes, you've had some what I would call disconnected energy policies over many years, which did not allow the Philippines to sort of move towards a more modern type energy policies. It's not because nothing happened. I think sometimes people sort of look at what has happened and feel everything was missed, nothing happened. It was a very big, very positive change in your energy laws back in 2001. And the problem was that they were not implemented. So there was some great thinking going on for 20 years ago, and it's a big loss for the Philippines today that some of the things that should have happened with the deregulation, with privatization back in 2001 was sort of not implemented. And part of that was because of these conglomerates and the lack of efficient competition in the market and other things. And some of the terms that the concessions were given on, as I said, were sort of stuck in the thinking back then. It didn't accommodate change easily. So this has hampered a more developed energy policy here. But let's go to the really good news. The really good news is the Philippines can do a lot of things very well. You can do geothermal, you can do hydro, you can do biomass, you can do solar, you can do onshore, offshore wind, and you can do waste to energy. I mean, you have so many opportunities to build a strong, resilient national energy production. Get rid of your dependency on Indonesian coal and other sources that are draining the coffers of your national bank. Make sure that Filipino sun and wind and not coal miners in some third country are making sure that you have your electricity and energy and also being part of the new opportunities that will come with renewables. So I think, you know, there is a really good story waiting to happen here in the Philippines. Very happy the Marcos government has taken some quite far-reaching steps to try to move energy policies, especially in the renewable space, forward. And I'm quite optimistic about how we will see a rapid and massive expansion of renewables here. And of course, equalized cost of renewables are the cheapest kind of energy you can get today. And people often ask me, you know, what is the price of electricity in Denmark? It's high. If you're a consumer in Denmark, you pay a lot. But that's not because the production cost is high. That's because they tax it a lot. And you don't have to tax it if you don't want to do that. We would have low prices. But the fact is, the equalized cost of producing electricity in Denmark with our huge renewable input is the lowest in the advanced economies world. So if you look at the OECD countries, Denmark has the most, the lowest prices, even though we have the highest renewable energy production if we look aside from hydro, because some countries have a lot of hydro and we can't compete with that. So this is great, and you have seen foreign investors come in strongly into this area, which is great. Denmark has companies here who have offered to invest over $5 billion into renewable energy here, and it's going to come on pretty soon. So the target is actually 2030. Let's see if that's possible to have it up and spinning 2030. Maybe it's going to be 31 or whatever, but it's not going to be 2040. I mean, it's going to be soon, and it's a huge investment. It's a great signal to capital markets in the world that people are willing to make a bet on the Philippines here. So let's hope it goes well, because too many Filipinos do not have electricity. People are paying far too much for having electricity. And reliability is a real issue in many places. The next slide, please. So what the Marcos government and what President Marcos himself understands is that you need to get a lot of renewables online fast, because it's the fastest way to get large-scale inputs into the system. It's also going to provide the cheapest energy, at least down the road. It may not be the cheapest day one. When you start something new, you have some expenses. One of the expenses you're going to have when you introduce variable renewables, that's like solar, sun only shines half the day, as you will know, and wind, sometimes it's going to blow more, sometimes it's going to blow less. These are called intermittent sources of renewable energy, and that necessitates an upgrade of your grid infrastructure, and that is, of course, a cost. You get a lot of advantages by upgrading your grid infrastructure, because it all opens for so many other opportunities. You can much easier do sector coupling, you can much easier build resilient systems, and you can dive into more cost efficiency. So in the long run, it's a big win. But in the short run, there are some expenses. And who pays those? Is it the consumer? Will it be the developers? Will it be part of your electricity price? All those things are something governments need to deal with and find out of. Now, you have a number of coal plants. There are several, even of the large plants owners here, who have announced that they're going to phase out of coal. Certainly, there is a need to look carefully at this, because the coal power plants as such are somewhat overextended, and they are being depleted because nobody wants to invest in coal. But your energy demand is also rising very fast. And as it says here, the expectation is going to triple by 2040. So you need to put a lot more electricity into the grid very, very fast. Otherwise, you can't close the gap and you can't lower the price. It's really important it happens. What is the longer term outlook here? Well, there's more good news, actually. The good news is that there will be more and more renewable energy. It doesn't matter what policies you have. In the long run, no matter what government you're going to have a lot more renewables, because it's such a cheap source, but also because there will be a very high demand for renewable electricity. And the marginal price, this is very interesting to think of, the marginal price of electricity will start to converge towards zero. Not the cost. There is always a cost of production and running and system maintenance, whatever. So it's not like the cost will go down to zero, but the marginal price will start converging down towards zero. That's a very new, interesting energy world to live in. So today, we have to conserve energy, we have to be mindful of how we use it, whatever. in the future, energy prices will drop dramatically because of all this renewable input. There's simply so much renewable energy available in the world, and it will be built. So for Denmark, we already now are quite self-sufficient on the electricity side with renewables. But our goal is actually we will be supplying to many, many millions more than live in Denmark. And we'll probably end up somewhere like about 25 million people. And Denmark is only 5 million people. So we'll be producing electricity for 25 million, even though we're only 5 million. And then we're going to either store some of that energy as power to X, that's hydrogen, which can then replace oil in some cases, or fly jet planes and stuff like that, which are difficult to electrify. And we can also export to the rest of Europe. And we have made agreements with Germany, which has a huge need for more sources of electricity to supply them. Next slide, please. So nothing is perfect, as I said before. There are challenges with renewables, and I already mentioned two of them. One is the intermittent sources, and the other is that you will need to upgrade your net and transmission systems. That does cost money. Who's going to pay for that? There will also be a lot more work with load balancing. That is that you have sort of various inputs coming in and out of the system with very short notice. And what that will lead to is price swings. In Denmark now, people have an app, and a lot of people use it even on a daily basis. So you can see when the price is low and when it's high. So at 7 o'clock I can start my washing machine. It'll even tell you sometimes when the wind is blowing really hard in Denmark, the price actually becomes negative. Okay, so the company will pay you to use electricity. So if you get a signal, like Sunday 1 o'clock, the price will be negative. Lots of Danes will go out and start their tumblers and washing machines, whatever, at 1 o'clock, because that's when the electricity company actually going to pay you some money back. We also have a challenge with energy storage. Because it's relatively expensive, and people very often think about energy storage as battery storage. I mean, battery storage is just crazy expensive, if you ask me. Using battery storage for load balancing makes a lot of sense. So we're going to see large-scale battery storage systems because it can be used very efficiently for load balancing. But I also have to say that we need large-scale, cheap energy storage. And this, again, is where sector coupling comes in. In Denmark, we can store tremendous amounts of electricity in the form of hot water into these underground networks and reservoirs of hot water that we are lying in the ground. It's extremely cost-effective. You retain a very high degree, I mean, up to 90% of the electricity you produced. It's a great way to manage storage. There are fortunately a lot of research going into cheap large-scale storage. And this spring, a Danish company called Heim will demonstrate a system that is being built in Denmark right now, commercially being built, not research. I mean, that's something you can actually buy, which is in the market. A system using ion sodium salts. Ion sodium has become very famous in the energy sector because people are talking about these ion sodium reactors, the small modular nuclear reactors. They use this molten salt technology, but that's not radioactive. Ion sodium is not radioactive, but it uses ion sodium to manage the nuclear part of it. But you can take away the nuclear part and you can just use it as energy storage. It's a very interesting model, and that is actually very large industrial scale storage at very cheap prices. There are other people who are working with pressure systems, weight systems, water systems. Somebody will succeed. I promise you. So, and they will succeed soon. On a timeline from now to 2030, we will have cheap, commercially available mass storage of energy, which is a good thing. Then there's some environmental challenges. People have all kinds of misconstrued ideas about renewables, about nuclear, about oil, and I don't know what, because people frankly don't understand these things very well. So one of the things you will hear is, windmills are bad for birds or whatever. Yes, they are bad for birds. Birds die from strikes, but what actually kills birds? It's not windmills. What actually kills birds are cats. Cats just kill insane amount of birds every year, billions of birds, literally. So that's a big killer. And the next worst thing about energy is the power line. Power lines kill, lots and lots of birds every year. And that doesn't matter if it comes from nuclear or oil or whatever. Lots of birds die from that. And nuclear kills more birds than windmills do. And that's because, windmills have the problem with bird strikes. They fly into the rotors or into the pylons, but mostly the rotors are the problem here. Whereas nuclear power plants, they tend to cook the birds because of heat release and steam release, and then simply because the building plants are so big, birds flying into them. I'm sure all of you have been in a high rise or some large building, and you heard a bird sort of bash into a big window. And those bird strikes actually kill a lot of birds. So we should have no birds killed by any kind of power generation. I'm just saying, every kind of electricity, energy production has environmental costs. It has cost when we mine, it has cost when we drill, it has cost when we put windmills on land, when we put them into the sea. Solar farm has cost when you put it on land. There is no free lunch. You can mitigate, and we need better technology for sure. That's what we need to do. But there's no free lunch. That's also true for renewables. So next slide. Yeah, so key action points. So going to wrap up here, I think, as I said, if you want to do something good for the Philippines, work for political consensus on long-term energy planning. It is so important that whoever becomes president after President Marcos and the new administration, that they carry these policies forward. Otherwise, you will get what you had before, stop, go nowhere, step one, step back. It's been messy, and it's not the way for this country to move forward, because you have great opportunities, seize them. Just transition, hugely important. If you're going to have deep changes in big systems, electricity affects lots of people. Everybody is affected by electricity. Just imagine, the electricity company is the company closest to you. The last thing you do before bed, what's that? You turn off the lights, say goodbye to the electricity company, good night. So they are just everywhere, and they have a huge impact. You start messing around with those systems. It's very important, take into account the socio-economic impact of that. And there is a good thing with renewables is that it's Filipino jobs. There will be more jobs for Filipinos as you go deeper into renewables. Good thing. And then pricing. This has come up in a lot of countries. There needs to be a premium for pricing. As prices come down, at some point in time, this should be perceptible to consumers. That has been a problem in some countries, frankly, where people put up large renewable and they're making, energy for nothing, but the price is high, and that can then lead to difficult political discussion about that. And then, of course, this government has done a lot. I think they've done some great policies, but you need more reform. You need to dig deeper. You need to refine your energy system, and you will need to work harder on new laws, new regulations, better policies, higher degree of interaction in your system. You need to find out how you're going to finance certain stuff. You need to educate people, workers, for implementing your new policies. There's a very large policy package there that needs to be tackled. Next slide, please. Yeah. So just a short word on COP28. I was at COP28 because the embassy actually took a global initiative, and we're very happy that the Philippines, together with Denmark, launched that initiative at COP28. So COP28 for the first time has now a formula on moving out of fossil fuels, and the implication of that is not, end of all oil. We're going to need oil for certain industrial uses like plastics and stuff like that. We're not going to get away without that. But not burning it for fuel is now part of the common goal setting. And I learned something very important and surprising to me. I've worked a lot with energy policies. And when I was ambassador to the UAE, one of the world's very large energy countries, I, of course, learned a lot about the oil and gas industry. I also was ambassador to Qatar. And one of the things I learned was that the sort of the perception in the industry 5 years ago, that's not a long time ago, 5 years ago, was that peak oil, the day where the world would use most oil, would be around 2050. Okay, so 2050 was sort of peak oil. Then about 3-4 years ago, that was actually pulled back all the way to 2040. I just thought that was amazing. What is going on? And can you really sort of collapse that timeline with 10 years? It's just amazing. And this tells a lot about how much is going into renewables. And then there was a guy from IEA, the International Energy Agency, and I was having a seminar where he and I were speaking together on energy policies in the Middle East. And I said this, that they had pulled back peak oil from 2050 to 2040, which was a big surprise for a lot of people who didn't know, oil-producing countries like we did. But he corrected me. He said, well, the IEA the day before had come out with a new report, and they now believe that peak oil can be not even just 2035, which was announced just before COP28 started, but they now have a calculation showing that peak oil may already be in 2027. You heard me right, in 4 years from now. If that happens, that is amazing. And it shows how much more renewables are coming forward. Now, the two big countries that are driving this right now, apart from all the action in Europe and India and whatever, but there are two factors that have made IEA change. So, because they knew Europe was on track and they knew a lot was going on in India. But the two facts are the US. The US is investing $150 million a day on solar, just on solar. And China. China is not saying a lot. They're not making a lot of promises. We'd like them to make more promises. We'd like them to say more, but they're actually doing a lot, which is interesting. Quietly, they're doing a lot. So this is why people now believe peak oil has moved forward. So just to say, these conferences, we can have a lot of ideas, it's helpful or not. But they do set targets that inspire the world to move in one way or the other. Of course, things can change. Trump famously has sort of announced that he thinks America should start drilling again. If they do that, Trump comes in and he changes the U.S. course. It's not going to be 2027. I can promise you that. We need the U.S. to be there too. So, famous last word. What did we do in COP28? What was this initiative about? It was about making sure that jobs for the renewable energy transition become scalable. There's a huge gap in workforce for the renewable transition. We need people for transmission lines, for cabling, we need them for battery storage, we need them for wind farms, we need them for solar farms. It's huge, and we're talking millions of people that need to be educated. And the initiative is to have standardized curricula and certification process that allows the mass education of people into these roles. And that was launched. As I said, I was very happy. It was Denmark, Philippines together, but we also had the UK there, Australia was there, Norway was there. There were a number of international organizations like International Renewable Energy Agency, and there were a number of private actors. And I'm quite hopeful this will move forward. It's going to be an important initiative for the Philippines. You need it for the Philippine market, but it may also give jobs for overseas workers. If there are some Filipinos want to take those skills abroad, there'll be a huge demand for that also. And this is a country that has had a tradition of sending people overseas to work. So there's a Filipino angle to that initiative too, and certainly great working together with the Philippines at COP28. So I probably talked too long already, but I also understood I had a little extra time because of our German colleagues being not here. So let's have a bright green future. I sometimes I'm unhappy because people sort of feel that if we move towards renewables and whatever, it's all going to be dark and horrible. It's not. The future is brighter and it's greener out there, and we can have it all. Fortunately, thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Ambassador Melvin. Thank you so much. Denmark is really leading the way towards renewable energy for the world. And I'm so happy that I learned so much from you, and I'm sure our participants and those who will watch this in our website, and those who are watching through YouTube are also learning a lot. Thank you so much. And now we're going to open the floor for question and answer. First question, I think Vicky wants to ask a question. Vicky?
No, I was clapping my hands for the ambassador.
Okay, sorry. Oh, it's Tessa. You're uploading, sorry. Just saw a hand.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ambassador Melvin, for that inspiring talk. I'm interested about your solar farms, because usually when we talk about solar farms, they are huge and they can affect biodiversity. What about community-based solar, where you put solar panels on the rooftops and this is managed by communities, or can this possibly be a business opportunity for companies? And instead of putting it on large lands, put the solar on our rooftops, and maybe gain from the maintenance. And I don't know how this can be a business opportunity. So do you have models like this in Denmark? Thank you.
Yes, I think a lot of countries have this, and what we are seeing is indeed a combination of what you call industrial scale solar and localized solar. What you really need is advanced energy system to sort of manage that in the most efficient way. So you need a smart grid system to do it in the most efficient way. But if we look to a country which doesn't have a great net system, which is India, they have a lot of localized solar there, and they're building a lot more because there are so many Indians who actually don't have electricity right now, who are off grid, as it's called. And there are opportunities. There's work. There's economic growth in that. It's definitely something to look at. Now, one of the things we did in Denmark, just to share something for inspiration, is every time you build a new house now, everything that's external, like if you have an apartment block, the elevators, the common lighting, these kind of things, has to run on solar. So you have rooftop solar on or all new apartment buildings. And they basically run all this with rooftop solar. So it is possible to do something, and it does help to have that. At the end of the day, what you want is you want people to be able to sell rooftop solar and small scale solar into the grid. But as I said, we need to have a smart grid first. But certainly there are job opportunities. India is a great example. I think India has done a lot of things right to expand solar very rapidly there. It's worth looking at.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Ambassador Melvin? Can you help me search the gallery for raised hands? Or maybe there's a question in the chat box. Is there a question in
Miss
the chat?
Tessa again.
Tessa? Okay, Tessa.
Yes, I have another question. You mentioned that Denmark reduced energy strategic vulnerabilities. What are those vulnerabilities? And another is sector coupling. Can you give examples on how the Philippines can do the sector coupling? Thank you.
Thank you. Two great questions there. Yes, strategic vulnerabilities is what we're seeing that, for example, Germany was hit by recently when the Russians cut off gas supply in the wake of the Ukraine war, and it caused, a huge spike in inflation in Germany and therefore also the euro area. It left Germany very vulnerable. There was discussion, did Germany have to actually stop running its industry during the winter last year? It had to go out and buy a lot of gas contracts at a high price to make sure it doesn't happen this year, and it seems that they were successful in that. So it's a good example of, if you are getting your supplies from geostrategic, uncertain, or unhelpful actors, it's a vulnerability. And if we look at oil, for Asia, it's predominantly coming out of the Middle East. Right now, you have tragic war situation around Gaza. You have Yemen, Houthis, it's a terrorist group in Yemen, shooting rockets at ships in the Indian Ocean. And there's always a risk, there can be in Iran, US altercation or whatever, and then the Persian Gulf shuts down. These are real vulnerabilities if you are an oil important country like the Philippines is. So these are the kind of vulnerabilities I was talking about, strategic vulnerabilities. If you have your own energy, you don't have those kind of problems. And the world will become, I think, a more peaceful place because of this in the longer run. It takes years, not tomorrow, but longer run, this will help reduce friction in the world, which will be a good thing. Will also help a lot of poor economies that they start producing their own electricity and are not oil dependent. The other question, it slipped my mind now because I talked too long about the first one. I need to answer shorter. It was
sector coupling.
Sector coupling, yes. Example of sector coupling here, yes. Sector coupling can be done, I think, in two ways here. You want to do sector coupling in the Philippines, either in the urban areas or in the expanding urban areas, or you want to do them in some of the industrial parks, like some of these free trade zones. That's where you can do it because you have a high exchange of use of electricity, use of heating and cooling in a concentrated area, which makes it a lot cheaper to roll out. If you start rolling it out, in provinces, far reaches, we can do that in Denmark because, we have lots of money and lots of experience and lots of time to do that. But for the Philippines, it's about the large urban centers. It's especially about new developments, and it's about your industrial parks. And there you can do that. You can, even in Denmark, we're thinking of have direct feed in from wind energy into some industrial parks and just use the energy there, either electricity, or if they're not using electricity, transforming it to heating, cooling, using industrial processes and pulling it out again as electricity if that's still available. So Manila, this country has a lot of bright future ahead of it. Just don't mess up your politics as you did before. You will have steady growth, 6-7%. The next 10 years, that's going to double the economy. You're going to be $1 trillion economy, in a decade or so. It actually has a very bright future in front of it. And one of the things that's going to happen is Manila is going to become a lot larger. A lot larger. I know it's difficult to imagine, but I'm just telling you, Manila would be a lot larger. Probably at the end of the day, half of all Filipinos will live in Manila. That's and Manila will of course be a lot larger. It's going to go all the way from Clark and down to Batangas, something like that. And so there will be a lot of new development. And what you should do is you should build those developments with sector coupling. There's centralized heating, there's centralized cooling, and you should link that to the electricity system. That's what you need to do. And it's not very difficult to do, just make zoning rules and make sure that this is done from day one. There was one area where it was planned to be done, which was BGC. It could have been done in BGC. It should have been done in BGC. Some buildings in BGC were built with such piping inside them. It's just not being used because at the end of the day, there couldn't be a good agreement between the energy producer and the ones who wanted to do the sector coupling. But zoning laws and the regulation can deal with that. And since you're going to be building, millions and millions of residential offices, workspaces, industrial outlets in this city, to just get the legislation there, get started. In Denmark, we just forced everybody. You couldn't build anything, that wasn't part of the integrated system. That's what you need to do. Okay. And it's not difficult.
All right, thank you.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to welcome my co-moderator, David DeAngelo. David, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah. Good afternoon. It was such a heavy topic. I left very, very early, but still. So it's a very nice discussion. I think, thank you, Marie. I think we had a hand raised from Dr. Galang, and I have a very interesting question as well for.
Okay, I have 3 minutes and I have to go to the airport, so we'll do.
Oh, yeah. Quickly.
Yeah. Well,
David, quickly. Yes, 3 minutes.
Dr. G first.
I wonder if the ambassador can tell us how renewable energy can solve our traffic problems. But anyway,
I can.
I wanted to ask about your energy mix. You said we have to have diverse sources. What is the present energy mix of Denmark? And what were your challenge? I know that you're a leader in offshore wind energy production. What were the challenges that, how did you surmount the challenges in offshore electricity production? Because it should be very expensive, difficult, and can you tell us something about that?
Yes, just let me say, electrify your transportation system like Japan has done, put everybody into the subway and metro, and that's going to solve it. And you're going to have to do that because you can imagine 50 million people living here. It's just going to be madness if you don't get mass transportation right. So, just start digging that metro tomorrow. And you need long lines going, south to north. That's what you need. But you can do it. Of course, you can do it. Lots of other cities did that. Copenhagen did that. Electrified transportation. People will choose it. It's going to be quicker. It's going to be cheaper. It is really the solution. And it's not rocket science. It's not been done yet here, but it's going to come. And it's going to be good. So it's going to be good. Anyway, so for this question, it didn't start offshore, it started onshore, and then we sort of started running out of space in good places, and people could see it's blowing a lot out there. We started experimenting with that. In the beginning, it was very expensive, but the costs are down now. It's not very expensive for us to do. And one of the important reasons for that is because it's such a large scale. So this is one important reason. The other reason is it's what you in the Philippines often will call near shore. Not because it's near shore in Denmark, but because our sea bottom doesn't level off as fast as it does in the Philippines. So the North Sea is not quite as deep, as the Pacific outside of the Philippines. So this has been helpful. But certainly in the beginning, it was technically difficult and it was expensive. But we're in a good place now. So
Thank
and
you.
you need that. I just have to say, you just need that metro so much. Just to
Thank you so very much,
Thank you.
Ambassador
Thank you.
Melvin. We've been really lucky to have you here today. Thank you for accepting our invitation and for sharing your knowledge and Denmark's project with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you
Have a
very
safe
much
trip.
for the. Yeah, please, David.
Have a safe trip. I could have. It's just a concern about those who are not for renewable energy. Their main concern is how renewable is solar and how environmental friendly is solar. Considering that you have to mine nickel and the batteries are very hard to dispose of. So those are just my
Yeah.
concerns that are being
Well,
aired.
I think these are valid questions, and everybody needs to, come up with answers. But we did talk about this, and what I underlined was that there is no perfect energy source today. They all have environmental costs, and some of them are not very well understood by the general public. But they all have different kinds of environmental costs. It's not great to mine coal or dig up oil either. I mean, that's also not a very clean business. So I don't think that it's good to say, we have a perfect solution. Renewables is attractive because it can reduce carbon emissions. And that's why it's very important to go down that route. We need to lower carbon emissions, and renewables is a good way to achieve that. But on the environmental side, everybody needs to work harder. The solar industry needs to work harder. The wind industry needs to work harder. The oil industry needs to work harder. And I think a lot of action is going on. Nuclear needs to work harder. A lot of action is going on trying to technically improve in all these areas. And meanwhile, we just have to accept the fact that is now that no matter what kind of energy production you go for, it has environmental costs. They look different, they have different weights, but it's for real. And it's much more complex landscape than people normally think about. I did give the example before with bird kills. Nuclear has more bird kills than wind energy. So does coal and oil, by the way. But people sort of intuitively think, yeah, there are bird strikes and whatever. And then they think, okay, that's a problem. And none of these production forms are actually very important because a huge killer for birds and electricity production are the cables, the power lines. They kill far more. I mean, more than all nuclear and coal and renewables and windmills and whatever. The power lines just kill lots and lots of birds. Nobody talks about it. I don't know why, but so it's good to have this discussion. It's necessary. We need to get better, for sure. We need to look more at recycling. The only people who have solved the recycling equation is the wind industry. It's the only recyclable energy source we have today, is wind. They are today, if you look at Siemens, Vestas, if they aren't at 100%, it's 99.7 or 8% recyclable. The others need to catch up there for sure, a lot. So, last famous word, that nobody knows how to decommission a coal power plant because inside the plant, it's radioactive. So food for thought. So good to talk to you. I really need to go now to my
Yeah,
plane.
sorry we kept you.
No problem.
Have a safe trip, by the way.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Be safe. Bye.
A lot of things to really think about, Maria, right?
Yeah, okay. But now we're going to go back to regular programming.
Okay.
Yeah, so our next speaker has over 30 years of experience in the energy sector, with particular focus on renewable energy development, national energy planning, and policy formulation. He served before as Director for Energy Planning in the Department of Energy, where he was involved in pioneering geothermal steam pricing, electricity cost structures, and transfer pricing, national energy balance reporting, and the conduct of nationwide household energy surveys. He is the former president of the Biomass Renewable Energy Alliance, a member of the National Renewable Energy Board, representing private developers, and the Energy Transition Advisor of the Institute of Climate and Sustainable Cities, or ICSC. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Alberto de Lusong III.
Thank you for this opportunity to give this presentation on the challenges and possibilities of the Philippine Renewable Energy Transition Plan. First, some historical context on the many energy transitions we've done. I'd like to start with showing a graph of the Brent and Dubai crude oil prices starting in 1970. In the early 70s, we were nearly 100% dependent on oil for power generation. Just a few hydroelectric power plants, as I recall. But in 1973, we had the first oil crisis when oil prices increased by over 10 times. Prior to 1973, the Philippines had nationalized power generation under the National Power Corporation. When the crisis hit, PNOC was created in November 1973, and the Ministry of Energy was created in October 1977. We had the second oil crisis, a much higher price increase in 1979. But by that time, we had the structure in place to deal with it. If you look at the imported energy share, it was 74.63% in 1979. This declined to less than half, to 48% in 1984. Indigenous energy was only 25% in 1979, primarily hydro. We were just starting to develop geothermal. And by 1984, indigenous energy accounted for 52%. 27.68 from hydro, 24%, a big jump from geothermal. I note that the current government target is 50% by 2040, which was included in the last presentation of the Department of Energy. Slightly lower than what we've achieved in the past in 1984. Now, I call this the first transition from oil to indigenous energy. Now, in 1986, we had a change in government. The DOE, Department of Energy, was downgraded to an Office of Energy Affairs. And the structure that was put in place was practically dismantled. And in the latter part of the term of President Aquino, we saw the blackouts that hit many parts of the country, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So that in the next administration, the DOE was re-established in December 1992. And let's look at the plan at that time. This was from a World Bank report in 1994. And basically the plan was we were to increase our coal capacity from 381 megawatts in 1995 to 3,971 megawatts in the year 2000, a 10-fold increase over 5 years. I call this the second transition from indigenous energy and renewables to coal. This is where we are at right now. And if you look over the period 1996 to the current period, we see oil and coal prices at an upward trend. What we expect from finite resources. And even with the Renewable Energy Act in towards the end of 2008, what we see is the continuous increase in coal generation capacity, as indicated by the black lines, both in capacity at the top of the chart and in actual generation at the bottom of the chart. So while renewable energy capacity increased with the passage of the Renewable Energy Act, the actual generation from renewables was basically flat from 2009 to 2020. And over the same period, we saw that coal price increases were even higher than oil. So we started with dependence on oil. We transitioned to hydro and geothermal, renewable energy, indigenous energy, and we transitioned to coal, and coal prices basically increased higher than oil. So I think we're now in a situation where we'd like a third transition from coal to clean, affordable, secure energy through private investments. Now, the first transition we did through government investments in National Power Corporation and Philippine National Oil Company, basically. So we want this transition to clean, affordable, secure energy, hopefully a lot more renewable energy through private investments. And I'll be using evidence-based analysis using the latest information from IMOP, DOE, and other sources, primarily the distribution utilities themselves. So here are the challenges facing the way forward. I'd like to talk of 4 challenges. The first is load variability, something no one really talks about. In the Philippines, I'm showing Luzon 5-minute data over the last 12 months, from December 2022 to November 2023. So 1 year data, 5-minute data in Luzon, and what we see is that typically the lowest demand occurs between Christmas and New Year, while the highest demand occurs in the second quarter of the year. Now let's take a look at the peak period. I'm showing May actual 2023, and you can see a load variability, a daily variation of 3,500 megawatts. So very high, very high. Basically from 8,500 megawatts to 12,000 megawatts during the peak month of the year. Even in the lowest period of demand, which is the period between Christmas and New Year, we see a daily variation of about 2,500 megawatts, say between 5,500 megawatts to 8,000 megawatts. So this is the kind of variability that we see in our grid. And yet, historically, if I go back to the mandate of the Department of Energy, Ministry of Energy, we've always been saying, let's have more baseload capacity. So if I were to look at true baseload requirement, looking at the period of the least demand, maybe our true baseload requirement for Luzon is around 7,000 megawatts. And I'm just using capacities that DOE has reported as of July 2022. There may be new capacities, but I think even using July 2022 data, I can show that we have a lot more base load than we need. So in this case, I've calculated 10,284 megawatts of base load capacity from coal, geothermal, and gas power plants. when our true baseload requirement is just 7,000 megawatts. In fact, if you look at coal capacity, it's even higher than 7,000. We have 7,519 megawatts. So what happens is all of these baseload power plants are vying for dispatch within our grid. Later on, you will see how this has affected their operations and their reliability. But first, why the high load variability? I think it's important to point out that residential customers account for 39% of electricity sales, bigger than industrial at 32% and bigger than commercial at 27%. So normally industrial customers would have a more steady requirement for electricity, while residential would have the most let's say limited requirement, particularly during the early parts of the day and towards the latter part of the day. Another point I'd like to make is that our percentage of own use and systems losses are high, 18% based on DOE's 2022 data. Finally, next point I'd like to discuss is intermittency of generation. I define intermittency as random starts and stops. If you look at the information from the grid itself, the metrics used by the IMAP for the grid, they consider solar and wind in Luzon and Visayas predictable. You know, the metrics that they use, MAPE and PERT 95, show that the values of these two metrics are well within what the grid considers predictable. There's also this notion that, you know, clouds affect the ability of a solar power plant dramatically. And, you know, if you look at the individual power plant, yes, it can be a dramatic impact on particular solar power plants when there's shading from additional clouds. However, if you look at their aggregated deliveries to the grid, we've seen a smoothening of the generation profiles of solar and wind. So these variability of solar power plants will actually decline as more and more solar power plants or more and more wind power plants are built. The variability smoothens itself out in the same way that, say, variability of demand smoothens itself out as more and more elements of demand are included. So variable generation from solar and wind is predictable. It's also coincident with peak demand, primarily in the middle of the day. Now let's look at baseload power plant generation. I point a recent award given to Dinginan, GN Power Dinginan Power Plant, which bagged the gold award for the coal power project of the year category. Now, but let's look at the operation of Dinginan over the last 12 months using the same 5-minute data. And what we can see is, when the output drops down to zero, that I count that as an outage. And those outages, say, of the unit 1, the red line, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 outages. One of those may be a planned outage, the outage that occurred sometime October, for example, but all the rest are unplanned outages. If you look at unit 2, then I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 outages. So these are the kinds of records that we've seen from practically all coal power plants. Dinginan just happens to be a new and our largest coal power plant. So while used to be the largest before Dinginan came in, so same, we see that it goes up and down during the day, practically every day. And we're seeing those outages again. Cycling operation of a coal power plant provides thermal stresses on the unit, which is probably a reason for the outages that we've seen. Even if you look at Masinloc coal, and Unit 3 is a relatively new supercritical coal plant, supposed to be efficient, but as you can see, the output is not as constant as even the other coal power plants. We see, for example, in Masinloc Unit 3, look at the outage in the second part of May, for example. That's the peak of the grid, and we saw greatly reduced demand or greatly reduced output from Masinloc Unit 3. SMC, all 4 units, it's the same. We look at gas unit. This is Ilihan, supposed to be running under LNG now. Again, very erratic generation from presumably a baseload power plant. Now, Avion is not a baseload power plant. It's a peaking power plant. And we see that in both units, they're operating at greater than 46% capacity factor. You would normally plan for about 10% capacity factor for a peaking power plant like Avion, and yet both units running at 46% capacity factor, showing the need for such peaking capacity. So intermittency, solar and wind are variable and predictable. They are not intermittent. It's the coal power plants that have demonstrated random starts and stops. Therefore, our peaking power plants like Avion are running at high capacity factors to fill in the gaps. And what we've seen is really an overcapacity of baseload power plants. That is the reason why they compete amongst themselves for dispatch. That's why they go up and down every day. Now, generation costs. Now, generation costs of power plants account for over half of the total electricity bill of power consumers, roughly 55%. And as we can see, if fuel costs are rising as we see here, and fuel costs are half of generation costs. If we look at the comparative blended generation rates of the 3 major utilities, Meralco, VECO, and Davao Light, we see that their blended generation rates have been higher, have been going high. So right now, Meralco is just above 7 pesos per kilowatt hour in October. VECO is about 6.50, while Davao Light is about 5 pesos. But if you look at the reason for the Davao Light cost, if you look at their coal generation rates, Davao Light actually has very high coal generation cost. It's about 10 pesos per kilowatt hour. And the reason it has a low blended generation rate is the access to hydro in Mindanao, which is at about 3 pesos per kilowatt hour. Last point I'd like to make is I visited China recently in last week of June to first week of July, 4 cities, to look at technology, solar technology. And I'm seeing that solar panels, which used to be around 250 watts per panel, are now at 700 watts, or more than 3 times, or about 3 times, using TOPCon technology. And in fact, perovskite, a new kind of medium for generating power using irradiance, perovskite technology appears to be coming soon. And recently, there has been an announcement of Longi of a new silicon perovskite hybrid solar cell, announcing that it has an efficiency of 33.5%, compared to a typical silicon efficiency of, say, 23%, a very huge, about 40% increase in efficiency from these hybrid silicon perovskite panels. We looked at a wind manufacturer, and now onshore wind turbines are 6.5 megawatts compared with, say, the first wind turbines in Bangi Bay at 1.65, so over 3 times bigger. And having larger wind turbine units is the key to lowering their costs. Offshore wind, I note that the World Bank looked at offshore wind capacity in the Philippines. We have very high offshore wind potential. Well, the offshore wind turbines are now at 18 megawatts. So key takeaways on generation costs. Um, Fuel prices will be volatile, will continue to be volatile, and thus coal, oil, and gas power generation costs will be volatile with an upward trend. Solar and wind technologies continue to improve, and therefore this will continue to drive their prices, their generation costs downward. If we look at the transition to RE, as far as load variability is concerned, the main challenge is to match variable RE with flexible generation, primarily impounding and pump storage hydro and biomass. And as far as intermittency goes, it's actually coal that has shown intermittency, not solar and wind, which have proven to be predictable. And finally, generation costs, as volatile fuel, fossil fuel costs rise, solar and wind costs will drop. So if we're looking at the transition to RE, I think DOE is on the right track with the green energy auction. They're planning to include impounding and pump storage hydro and geothermal. We think ERC should recalibrate their gear price methodology. We believe that the transmission system should be expanded rapidly to match RE rollout. And finally, we're seeing a transition to more direct customer initiatives at power procurement. For example, solar rooftops and corporate PPAs. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Next speaker, he has been working in the energy sector for more than 25 years. She was appointed as Director 4 of the Renewable Energy Management Bureau, or REMB, on January 11, 2023. She oversees the implementation of the Renewable Energy Act of 2008 and its implementing guidelines and regulations, as well as development of new policies and strategies to meet the objectives of the RE Act through greater promotion, exploration, commercialization, and utilization of RE and promotion of the biofuels program in the country. She is graduated with a degree of Bachelor of Science in Geology and Bachelor of Law in 1991 and 2003, respectively. Ladies and gentlemen, to talk about the transition to renewable energy, the Philippine Roadmap, please welcome Director Marisa Ceres.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And thank you so much again to the Green Convergence for having me in this virtual forum, Kapihan para sa Kalikasan. I don't have access to the screen yet. Oh, okay. Okay. So I'll be talking on the Philippines transition to renewable energy, focusing on what we're doing here at the Department of Energy on the renewable energy sector. So let's go right into my presentation. So I'll be starting with the renewable energy profile. In 2008, the law was passed and took effect in January 2009 with a major objectives of accelerating the exploration and development of renewables by providing fiscal and fiscal incentives, and through the utilization and development of renewables, we will achieve self-reliance in energy supply, and also to address the effects of climate change by replacing the traditional source of fuels. So since the passage of the law and until 2022, we have added a total of 2,700 megawatts of renewables in our installation installed in our installed capacity, which is equivalent to around 271 or 79.5 billion cost of investments. And these projects generates more than 350,000 green jobs, and it has um, reduced around 29 million tons of carbon dioxide per year. Um, this slide shows us the power generation mix of the country, and as you can see, still the coal dominates our supply, as we have been importing coal for our power plants in the country. So in terms of generation, renewables is second at 22%. And in terms of installed capacity, still coal dominates at 44%, and renewables at 29.2%. So since the passage of the law, we have issued contracts for the development of renewables. And as of October 31 of this year, we are monitoring more than 1,000 contracts, majority of which comes from hydro with 430 projects. But in terms of capacity, as you can see, it's smaller compared to other technologies. It is followed by solar of 356 projects, and then wind. And as you can see in this chart, the potential of wind soared to 83 gigawatts, and most of this comes from offshore wind. So let's go to the program, the National Renewable Energy Program, which was updated to cover 2020 to 2040 horizon. So here we set a target of 35% renewables by 2030 and 50% by 2040 in terms of generation mix. So to achieve this goal, we need to have an additional capacity from renewables of 52,800 megawatts. And this is almost 7 times the current level of 8,000 megawatts. And most of the additional capacities would come from primarily from solar, then followed by wind, and then geothermal, and so on. So to achieve our target of 50,000 of our 50% RE there by 2040, this will be the total generation of renewables around 178,000 gigawatt hours. So to achieve these capacities, we have to put in place a whole of government approach where we have to set policies and programs that would encourage more investors in the country. So as we know, power sector is fully privatized in the Philippines, and we have to attract more private investors to put up power plants. So in the renewable energy sector, we have put in place RE transition pathways where we have the mandatory and voluntary pathways. The renewable portfolio standards is a mandatory policy where all the mandated participants are required to secure a certain percentage of renewables in their portfolio. Currently, we have set an RPS requirement of 2.52%, and it's incremental yearly. In the voluntary pathways, we have the net metering mechanism, the Green Energy Auction Mechanism. And of course, our Green Energy Auction Program is a program that helps our mandated participants to comply with their RPS targets. We have also have programs for off-grid areas. As our country is archipelagic, we need to encourage more investors in off-grid areas by promoting renewables in productive use of renewables in agriculture, in aquamarine, and so on. So there is a law that we are implementing currently, the microgrid law, where we require in putting up a project that it is required that it has to be with renewables. Also, we have the RE transition enablers, where we have a number of laws that are already in place to address all the concerns of project proponents, especially in the permitting process that caused a major hurdles in the past. But now we have the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop that addresses all the permits and clearances concerned. And it's a time-bound policy or time-bound system where the application is entitled to an automatic approval if the concerned government failed to act on the process or in the application within the given time. Also, we have the resource-specific program where we do resource assessment as a way to minimize risks. So we have resource assessment specific to different types of RE technologies. Now let's go to policy, renewable energy policies, and I would just like to highlight some of the major policies that we have issued. It was reported that RE sector in the Philippines is poised to grow faster because of the increasing interest of investors, as we have issued a number of policies to attract more investors. And just recently, a week ago, the Philippines ranked 4th place among the top 5 most attractive emerging markets for renewables in the world. And this is a very good news for us, as there are increasing interest in developing our renewable energy sources. And the recent policies that we have issued to attract more investors are as follows. We have eased the foreign ownership limitation in RE development. It was issued last year, November 2022, where all renewables are open to 100% foreign investors. But of course, there are some qualifications in the geothermal and hydro sectors. We have also issued a preferential dispatch for all renewables. So there is no more there is no differentiation. All RE resources are given preferential dispatch already. And then just recently, the president issued an executive order directing all government agencies to streamline the processes of the process of permitting and clearances in the development of offshore wind in the Philippines. So this is one of our flagship program in renewables where we highlight the high potential of offshore wind in the country of around 178 gigawatts. And because of this study by World Bank, we have received a lot of interest, and currently we have 82 offshore wind service contracts. And it's distributed here as shown on the map. All of the projects, all of these offshore wind service contracts are in their pre-development stage, and there is a need to study the geophysical structure of marine areas. Currently, we have the marine special planning. There's an ongoing technical assistance to determine the go and no-go zone in our marine space. And there is also an ongoing technical assistance on permitting and clearances. Other policy mechanisms that are being implemented currently are, as I mentioned already, renewable portfolio standards. The renewable energy market is not yet fully operationalized, as we have to wait for the price cap for renewable energy certificates. And we are informed that the Energy Regulatory Commission will be finalizing the price cap for the RE certificates. And that would be necessary to fully operationalize the RE market. The net metering program, there is a plan, and we have already, actually it's already signed and will be published soon, the expanded rooftop solar program, where we have we have introduced some business arrangements to attract more investors in rooftop solar facilities or solar projects. The Green Energy Option Program is a voluntary program that the end user or the consumers may avail if they opted to have their production produced from renewables. They can enter into a green energy option agreement. And the option, this is a continuing program where we set a certain capacity to be auctioned yearly. And the next auction will be focusing on non-FIT or specifically geothermal, pump storage, and reservoir hydro, as we need to increase the capacity of these technologies, has a capability to address the variability of other renewables, as they are considered base load, or they can be used as ancillary services. So, as mentioned, the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop is a big help in promoting renewables, as in this platform, the processing of permits, contracts, and clearances are all time-bound. And there is a provision on automatic approval, and of course, a corresponding sanction to those who caused the delay in the process. And as mentioned, the RE market is about to be fully operationalized. We'll just be waiting for the price cap that will be issued by the ERC. So to achieve the 2050 objective of having 50%, or more than 50% by 2040, And of course, by 2050, we are seeing that renewables is the dominant supply of electricity in the country. We need to capacitate our people. We need to do reskilling or upskilling of technical workers in the renewables. So there are numbers of discussions among the development partners in continuously doing capacity building with our Filipino technical workers. So there are a lot of things to do to achieve this target, but we are very positive that we're able to do this because of uh, an increasing support among other sectors. In there are we have received uh, a number of resolutions from LGUs um, declaring that their municipality or provinces would like to go renewable. So um, with all this uh, declaration from different sectors, we believe that our target for renewables of making it the majority source of energy in the country by 2040 is achievable. So I think that's the last slide of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Director Cerezo. That was uh, uh, what do you call it? A forward looking. And that ends part one of our forum. Before we proceed to the open forum, we invite you to turn on your cameras for a souvenir photo. In a little while, our Zoom host, Maribeth De Villa, will be calling the shots. Meanwhile, while you are getting yourselves ready for the
Preparing yourself.
cameras, David and I have some very brief announcements. David, can you start?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Green Convergence Secretariat will share a link to an evaluation form for today's Kamayan Forum. So please fill out the evaluation form. It will also be placed on your screen. Please take time to give us your feedback to help us improve the form. Also, the
Yes.
e-certificate, in case if you need one, will also be based on those who filled out the evaluation forms.
Okay. Okay, we're done with uh so we should we're done with the announcements. So we should Maribeth, we should
Yes po.
take the photos.
Yes po. You're already done. So
Is everyone
one, two,
ready?
yes. Yes po. 1, 2, 3. Another shot. Wait lang. 1, 2, 3. Thank you po.
Okay, and what's next?
Of course, now we will be having our Q&A portion. But before we start,
Yes.
well, Marie, let's have a few reminders for our
Yes, go ahead,
Q&A
David.
portion. First, to ask a question or share a comment, you may either raise your hand to verbalize it or post your questions on the chat box. Please unmute your microphone as soon as your name is called. Also, give your name, organization, school, or location, then state your question and to whom it is directed. We will take as many questions as time permits on a first come, first served basis. Yan.
Hey,
Siguro,
okay.
ang
Let's
una
start
ko
with the
siguro gustong itanong, no? Kasi we posted our announcement to this topic and there's a very interesting comment going on that particular posting on the GC page. Kasi there's a couple of people saying that this is a renewable energy hoax. There's actually no need to go renewable. Climate change is not happening. So I think to our speakers, I would like to know their feedback on, on those comments that this is all about business and capitalists trying to create something. So speakers, can you address that, particular uh, topic?
Is that the first question, David?
Yeah, yeah, because it's going on our Facebook post that
Yeah,
those
if I
couple of
may,
people saying that.
if I may address that,
Yes, please do.
yeah, my response is this. Nothing in my presentation shows climate as the objective. Nothing. It just so happens that if you pursue least cost analysis, the result will be renewables rather than coal. I've showed you how expensive coal has become. I've showed you the intermittency of coal and the non-intermittency or predictability of solar and wind. So there's no such, whether the climate is a hoax or not, it doesn't matter. As far as the Philippines is concerned, the way to go is renewables. Let's assume it is a hoax. Still, we have to go renewables. Also, I've shown that we've done it before, better than the current uh, target of the government. From 79 to 84, just 5 years we went from 25% RE to 52%. So we've done it before, we can do it again.
Wow, that's a beautiful answer.
Right answer. Nice one.
Okay, anyone else wants to pitch in an answer? Okay, so Tessa
Let's
has her
go
hand
to
raised.
Tessa. Yeah,
I think she has
go
a
ahead.
question.
Yes,
Tessa?
yes, good afternoon. I have a question for both of our speakers. I don't know if I got this right, but Mr. Delusong said that in 1984, the indigenous sources of energy was 52%. And our speaker, si Director Cerezo, says that by 2050, our renewable energy will be 50%. I'd like to get their on this. Is the ambition of the Philippines by 2050 too low, or can we put it up higher? So that's my question. Thank you.
Maybe I can respond to that. The target that I presented is only for renewables, but it doesn't show there the other indigenous sources. So when we say indigenous, of course, that includes other sources that we utilize here in the Philippines. I don't have a slide on that, but currently we are still net importer of energy. We have petroleum, but most of our uh, uh, supply are coming from abroad also. We have coal, um, but then we also import coal. So it's not similar. My slide is not similar. I mean, it's a different information that was presented by Mr. Bert Dalusum, I think, that we have already reached more than 50% independence before. But then my slide is referring to our target of renewables by 2050. Yeah. So now when it comes to making it higher, we will be revisiting our target. Of course, from time to time, we have to make sure that we have the grid to connect all of them, but we have to do it on a timely basis. So for now, that's our target. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may add to Attorney Maris Cereso's answer, I support her answer that the NREP, National Renewable Energy Program, is a target. Government can choose to increase the target. And I think what I've shown in my presentation, for example, the commercialization of perovskite as a solar technology will give the government the reason to increase that target. We've also seen developments in other technologies. I've seen new geothermal technologies coming to the country. So yes, I believe that when we revisit the target, it will likely increase, consistent with what Attorney Marie said.
You. Can I have another question? If no
Go
one is
ahead, Ms. Tessa.
Yes, I'm interested about the community-based rooftop solar power. Question for our DOE representative. What is the status of the community-based? Are there incentives for this? And also about the net metering? I think we have to strengthen it and actively promote it. But what are the plans for this? Because we've heard it a long, long time, but we haven't heard anything about its progress. Are there plans to plug it on TV, social media, so that it becomes more, people will know more about it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. The net metering mechanism, it's already in place, but it's limited to 100 kilowatt. The law have set a cap on that, but uh, we have drafted, and I think it's about to be published. The expanded the expanded rooftop program, where we encourage supply contingency option for those who have their own use roof-mounted solar to sell to the distribution utility or to the grid during supply contingency like yellow alert or red alert. So there is such a business opportunity in that new guidelines. Just watch out for the publication of that recently signed department circular. Also in that expanded solar rooftop, we have the lease to generation option where we allow multiple rooftops establishment for leasing as one capacity generator, and they can sell it to the distribution utility like Meralco, Veco, or to the grid. Another business uh, modality in this department circular is the restricted peer-to-peer energy trading, where we allow consumers in an enclosed area, like for example in a certain community, certain village, to participate in the trading of electricity through a platform and a third-party supplier. So this is an innovation po of how to increase more interest in rooftop solar. So once this is in place, we hope that more developers, more business owners would put up solar facilities in their rooftop. So watch out for that po. We will be also posting this department circular. It was just signed this week, and this will be available also in the DOE website.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good news. Pero sana mapadali na rin yung pag-apply ng net metering, no? Kasi I heard somebody, parang ilang kaibigan ko nagsasabi, pinapahirapan daw, lalo na nung ibang company yung pag-apply sa net metering. So sana mapadali nila. Anyway,
Sige
thank
po.
you for that news. Yeah.
Yeah, sige po. Actually, yung may problema dyan, yung mga DUs natin na medyo siguro hindi pa nila na-capture yung process kasi usually yung mga DUs ang kanilang iniisip kapag may other parang parang makukulangan sila ng market. Yun ang thinking nila. Kasi may net, di ba, may sarili silang generator. So, bawas sa kanilang, ano yun, market. But then, they have to innovate. Kaya, we are actually in discussion with NEA to capacitate our, ano po, mga electric cooperative and DUs. Kasi so far, ang karamihan talagang nagne-net metering within Meralco franchise pa lamang po. In other DUs, parang hindi sila ganun ka-open. But it's a requirement po under the law. They cannot refuse it. Dapat. Dili-dili lang yun. Yan lang po.
They cannot refuse it. Dr. G, raising her hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are two terms that I would like to ask Attorney Cerezo to explain, and these are the preferential dispatch. Was it that preferential dispatch and the price cap for renewables? So, can you explain those two terms?
Okay, ma'am. So, doon po sa preferential dispatch, ito po pag binenta nyo sa spot market, ang electricity, binibigyan po ng preference na ibato o i-inject yung mga renewables compared to non-renewables. So, may assurance na mabenta ang renewables sa spot market. Yun po ang preferential dispatch. So, ibig sabihin, kapag may other non-renewables na available sa market, pero may available din na renewables, ang unahin po nating ibenta or bilhin sa spot ay renewables. So, it's a good policy na nakaka-attract sa mga RE generators kasi may assurance sila na mabenta ang kanilang generation. Pero yung isa po ay ano yun? Price
cap? Was that?
Yung price cap, ma'am, it's a component dun sa RE market. Sa RPS po kasi, sa Renewable Portfolio Standards, there is an RE certificate or Renewable Energy Certificate, which is a certificate that we are monitoring. Parang iyan po ang ating means for compliance of their obligation. The RE certificate ay may presyo po yan or may equivalent generation pala yan. One REC is equivalent to 1 megawatt hour of RE. And if a participant na mandated, for example, Meralco o anumang DU dyan na mayroon siyang mandate, may mandate yan sila para i-secure ang certain percentage of renewables. At nagkulang po ang kanilang RE supply, ang gagawin nila, bibili sila ng REC para masatisfy yung kanilang shortfall at ma-comply niya yung obligation niya sa RPS. Ngayon, hindi pa nag-ooperate fully yung RE market kasi we need to put a cap, a price cap, kasi pag walang price cap naman ang RE certificate, baka ma-abuse na gamitin daw for, siyempre may trading po yan, ma'am eh. Kung baga, yung may sobrang REX, ibebenta nyo doon sa may kulang, at kapag nandun na siya sa point of parang ina-assess na yung compliance niya, baka naman mag-overprice ang magbebenta. So we need to put a cap para wala pong abuse. Yun po ang ibig sabihin nun.
Thank you.
Maybe Sir Bert, maybe you want to add on this?
Yeah, I'd like to, just a few comments. First, on the cap. My fear, Attorney Maris, is that ERC, in its latest documentation of that cap, appears to indicate a cap of 96 centavos per kilowatt hour. I recall that the previous DOE recommendation was something like 5 pesos per kilowatt hour. 96 centavos per kilowatt hour is practically nothing. It's like making the REC a very cheap commodity, which is sort of the reverse of the fear that it will be overpriced. Mukhang napakamura naman po. And I just like to voice my concern as a also a previous member of NREP and a member of the Biomass Renewable Energy Association. Pag ganyan po ang price cap, sino pa ang bibili ng RE?
Yeah. So, we will discuss with them on this, sir. Tama po kayo kasi kailangan tama yung presyo ng REC para mapilitang mag-generate ang mandated participants. Otherwise, they will just buy RECs for their compliance.
Sige po. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? May mga katanungan pa ba tayo dyan?
Ang wala pang nagtataas.
Mukhang wala na.
Iisingit ko lang bago kayo mag-test, kasi yung sa Batangas Energy Forum, there was someone who said that there are, I think, RE power producers na walang distribution lines or there's no, may mga nagpo-produce ng RE pero ang problema ay sa distribution. Paano po ba kaya ma-address yung mga ganong issue?
Thank you, sir. Actually, yun po ang isa sa mga major topics for discussion dito sa DOE kasi maraming delays tayo sa transmission expansion. So we created an ad hoc committee where we addressed the concerns of NGCP kasi when it comes to transmission, grid expansion, sila po ang ating sila lang ang concessionaire natin dyan. So we have a regular meeting on this at especially ma-address yung mga committed projects natin kasi we don't want to have another curtailment. It is kumbaga iyan ang nakaka-disappoint sa ating mga developers that they have already completed the projects and they cannot deploy or they cannot inject power to the grid. So, mayroon kaming parang actually nasa kasama dito po sir ang Office of the President para to ensure that all these connection lines will be put in place just in time before for all these new projects to be injected to the grid. So may program din po kami, tawag namin ay Green and Smart and Green Grid program na kailangan natin itong bigyan ng budget kasi with all the projects that we have, especially po dan sa offshore wind, as we know, we don't have power plants pa sa marine area. Critical dyan yung pagtawid ng power. So we need transmission lines. At nabanggit kanina po yung mga materials that will be needing to put up all these lines. Kaya may tinatawag tayong mga green minerals or materials. Kasi we need copper. We need these metals para mailagay natin yan at mai-connect natin sa demand center yung mga power plants na yan from different parts of our country. So yan po isa sa mga usapin para magkaroon ng more RE, dapat kailangang may transmission. Sabi nga ng isa sa mga USIC namin, we cannot have energy transition without transmission.
Attorney Maris, if I may,
Sige po,
Go
sir.
ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, alam niyo po na sabi ko na kay ASEC Mario Marasigan na all of these delays caused by NGCP might mean na baka kailangan ng ilipat yung paggawa ng SIS to another party, and I have recommended na baka DOE is that other party. Kasi if you look at it, what is really an SIS? It's really just a way to recognize that you have to expand the grid at that particular location. Bakit hindi nagagawa ng NGCP yun? Eh sila naman ang magbe-benefit if they increase their assets. That's the only way for them to increase assets, and why are they dragging their feet? I couldn't understand that. So I've made the recommendation, eh bakit hindi na lang DOE ang gumawa ng SIS and to compel NGCP to expand the system according to the needs of the country, not on their ability to build those lines.
Yeah, that's a,
I'd like to really, support the DOE in taking over that function kasi nga parati na pong delay. Tingnan po natin yung consecutive transmission development plans. Pinlano nila na dapat 4 years ago. Ngayon, hindi pa gawa. If you look at published TDPs, very clear yung slow pace of expansion of the system. And yet that is a requirement, as you pointed out earlier, ma'am, for the RE transition to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you, sir. Yun na nga po. So, we will be looking for alternatives actually. Kapag hindi nila talaga nakayanan yung mga timelines na yan, there are options that we are entertaining right now. So, tingnan po natin kung ano po ang pwede nating gawin.
Salamat po.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Tessa's hand. Tessa, you have a question?
Yes, so I would like to ask both speakers, is 100% renewable possible for the Philippines? And if
That was the question, right?
when can this happen? And maybe what are the 3 things that we should do first? Thank you.
Those are 3 questions, actually, Tessa.
I'll take a first shot at that set of questions, set of questions, if I may. No, is it possible? Is it possible? I think so. Should we do it? Personally, it's probably not the least cost way of doing it. We've got indigenous gas, indigenous coal that maybe would be lesser cost. I look at the plans that we've seen from the DOE, and 100% RE, while possible, may not be the way to go. Also, how soon? I think we should wait for the full commercialization of the developments in offshore wind, solar, and geothermal to determine kung kailan yun. But we shouldn't, I think our role as a developing country is to focus on development, least cost. And for that, we need more and more renewables. But 100% RE is something that I think may be too much of a burden on a developing country like ours. Unahan kaya tayo ng mga developed countries. Sila naman ang naglagay ng mga greenhouse gases na yan. That's why we're having those problems today.
Okay, 100% renewables. It's possible, of course, when we question on possibility is possible po. But the question on when we have to assess the implication. Is it capable of providing 24/7 power at affordable cost? Kasi we have in the Philippines there's no subsidy. We cannot afford to subsidize or go back to subsidy again. And we need to make sure that the cost is uh, affordable to the people. But then, as we see the technological innovation going on, medyo mabilis po ang technological innovation sa renewables, and we need to catch up. Ang price din niya ay nagiging affordable. But then, as since renewables are site specific and we develop them as we find them kung saan sila nandoon, we need the grid. So lahat po yan kailangan natin i-assess to determine the affordability of the price. So tingin ko po we have to consider everything kasi we are an isolated country. We are not connected to any neighboring country yet. Kailangan ang continuous planning and continuous upgrading or updating of what is going on globally in the energy sector, in the renewable energy sector. And ang primary syempre na mandate namin sa Department of Energy is to ensure security and efficiency and reliability of our power sa Pilipinas. So, personally ako naniniwala na 100% is possible, but as to when, we have to make a careful assessment. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Tessa's hand thumbs up.
Very complicated things to consider, a lot of things to consider really.
Well, we're a developing country. Development is not easy. So wait, Mark, any more questions? Meron ba sa chat box? David, do you see anything?
I don't think you have a question on the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought, Nina, you had your hand raised a while ago. Did you bring it down?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So no more questions. So we're going to wind up. Thank you so very much to our resource speakers, Mr. Bert Dalusong, Attorney Cerezo. Thank you very much. And of course, he's not here anymore, but Ambassador Melvin, thank you. We learned a lot today, I think, and it's a good introduction to 2024 challenges as far as energy is concerned. Yes.
There's
Yes,
a hand
Nina?
raised. There's a hand raised, Jeffrey
Sir
Chung.
Joffrey Chung.
Apo, may question lang po.
Okay.
Sa mga distinguished speakers natin and host and co-host, no? I attended one of these seminar or talk wherein the topic was nuclear energy. And then I forgot who the speaker was. He was espousing the use of nuclear energy, no? Yung kasi 'di ba ang isa doon sa mga nagiging argument is that yung nuclear reactor natin, lalo na pag nag-shake yan, katulad yung sa Bataan nuclear power plant natin, nasa may fault daw, yun daw yung delikado. Ang sabi naman daw ng speaker was that yung Bataan nuclear power plant, it was created or it was built siguro almost 4 decades ago. Ngayon daw sa ibang bansa, yung ginagamit nilang nuclear reactor type is hindi na yung kasing laki katulad ng nakikita natin kay BNPP, which is much smaller and mas manageable na po siya. So, yun yung naalala ko doon sa isang point of argument doon sa na sinasabi niya, it could be better no if this could be espoused, no? Any comments for this or you may share your insights po, sir? Tsaka salamat po.
Maris? Or if not, I have a
Ikaw
comment.
muna, sir.
Ako muna, no?
Oo,
Okay.
sige po.
I'm an energy planner. I have nothing against nuclear or coal or any other technology. All of these are fine. They are options. But let's look at commercial nuclear today. Commercial nuclear requires 1,000, 2,000 megawatt capacity. No? That's too big. Tingnan nyo nangyayari doon sa Dingingin. No? 670 megawatt units. We have to cycle it every day. 1,000 megawatt unit size is too big for us. Now, yung sinasabi nilang maliit, SMR, small modular reactors, none of them are commercial. None. Wala po. Hindi po commercial. Nagdo-drawing pa lang sila, research. Hindi po commercial yan. Now, let's say commercial na yan. If the government allows it, if the laws locally, internationally allow certain technologies in the Philippines, I have no problem. My only problem is if the Philippine government is the one that builds it. Kasi nga, I think ang nuclear po, if it's truly a cheap, reliable technology, why don't they build it and compete in our power market? Pwede naman. Tingnan nga natin kung competitive talaga yan. Sino ba ang gagawa niya? I think if they are saying that small modular reactors are ready commercially, o sige, build na kaya. Kabit nyo nga sa power system namin if you pass all of the requirements and tingnan natin if it will compete competitively with the rest of the grid. I put that challenge back to all of those saying that nuclear is the way to go for the country.
Okay. Nuclear energy is not excluded. It's part of our it's part of the plan to be included in the energy mix. And as Sir Bert also I share with his opinion that we are supposed to kami sa Department of Energy then is technology agnostic. What we need to see is ano ba talaga ang best mix para sa ating bansa. May maraming medyo ang nuclear actually is a long way to go pa dahil there are 19 infrastructure that they have to comply. First, batas. Wala pa po tayong batas on nuclear energy. We have nuclear medicine, no? Pero sa nuclear energy, we don't have it yet. So, we need to get the support of the public. May mga requirements po na kailangan natin i-comply. The safety issue, the geological issue. So, hindi naman po masama na mag-prepare. Kaya may committee, may grupo na is an interagency group that works on the policy preparation whenever nuclear is feasible or not. Kasi ang bottom line pa rin po dito ay cost at support din ng tao. So while there is a new technology sa nuclear, yung small modular reactor, titingnan natin kung gaano siya ka affordable din. And yun nga, there are requirements that a country has to comply before going nuclear. At ang major nga dito ay ang batas. So wala pa tayong kami po sa Department of Energy, we allow all these technologies to compete. At of course, may batas tayo na may preference sa renewables when it comes to dispatching it sa grid. Pero mayroon tayo ring competitive selection process kapag ang market natin ay sa mga distribution utilities. Pero ang batas natin po kasi ay masyadong pro-renewables din dahil ang ating mga DUs, they are mandated to secure renewables eh. So when they are entering into a power purchase agreement, they have to consider their obligations sa RPS. So malaki po ang edge ng renewable, malaki ang kumbaga advantage niya as compared to other technologies. Ang kailangan lang talaga natin ay more investors sa renewables at kailangan mabilis din ang deployment kasi we need to make sure that uh, we have sufficient supply as we grow economically. So marami tayong requirements, maraming infrastructure na nangangailangan ng kuryente. So kailangan mabilis din ang deployment ng renewables. So ang appeal namin sa public is yung support in putting up renewables sa mga permits and clearances ay kailangan po natin yun. At sa Philippines, of course, ang requirement talaga ay mayroong host community support. At itong mga forum na mayroong mga fora na ganito is a good exercise po para ma-spread niya yung advantages of renewables. At kanina may nagtanong pala na hindi ko nasagot, ano ba ang ginagawa natin para i-promote pa ang renewables? We will be coming up with an AVP po na but it's more on the investors naman na ano ba ang advantages in investing renewables in the Philippines para mas marami po ang mag-develop ng renewables. So, yun po ang aking take sa nuclear. It's still price po. So kapag competitive siya, at of course the policy that we are having now, hindi pa po in place. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you. Nina, you have your hand raised.
Yeah. Well, practically speaking, the renewable energy has the edge, no? And I'm glad that the government and I think most people are supporting the renewable energy promotion of the government and the private investors. Again, practical issues really go for renewables. There's no place on Earth where it is safe to store nuclear waste, and the more the world goes to nuclear, the bigger the problem is. Where do we put that waste? But the bottom line for green convergence is our ecological.
You're breaking up, Nina.
Hew as much as possible. We try to hew as much as possible to nature and natural processes. Am I coming across?
Yes, now.
Okay, in nature, nothing. We in nature we go in cycles. No, nothing is wasted in nature. Everything that is waste of any organism, of any natural process, will be recycled back in nature. Everything is safe with this process. But in nuclear, when you have waste, you cannot recycle that waste. There is fission does not exist in nature. So it's not natural. fusion power source, fusion that occurs in stars and the sun all the time. But fission does not exist in nature precisely because the byproduct cannot go back to nature. The radioactive waste cannot go back to nature. So, of course, the biggest argument now is, the Philippines is awash with renewable energy. Why go into this technology? Why waste money on even studying it? In the face, our solutions, solar, wind, geothermal, ocean energy. God gave us these blessings. Why are we going to something which He did not give, which is really man-made? Thank you.
Thank you. You're coming back very soon. We are about to wind up, and
Okay.
before we go to our closing segment, I would like to invite everyone to please visit the Ako Ang Bukas Facebook page. Just search Ako Ang Bukas. You will learn a lot of things there. And also, I would like to invite you, if you're not yet a member of Green Convergence and you wish to become a member, to fill up our membership form. In previous for Kamayan forums, we had the form in the chat box. I don't know if we can have it now again, Mabeth.
Yes
So,
po.
okay. Please look for the form in the chat box if you're interested to become a member of the Green Convergence. Okay, now, David, start the
Okay,
closing
let's go.
segment.
Let's go for our closing remarks for today's very, very interesting forum. And to do that, I am very honored to introduce a mentor and one of my idols when it comes to environmental advocacy. Trustee of Green Convergence, please welcome for the closing remarks, Dr. Angelina P. Gala.
Thank you, David. When we chose this topic, renewable energy, for this Kamayan, we thought that it would be most appropriate because Christmas is a season of hope. And our speakers today gave us many facts which give us hope. From Ambassador Melvin, he gave us the statistic that globally they projected that oil would peak in 2050, and later on it was rejected. The peak was given as 20, and now it's 2027. So that's just 4 years from now. Oil will peak then, and we know that renewables are getting to be competitive with oil, and therefore the desire for oil will keep going down. He also mentioned that the US is investing $150 million for solar. So that tells us, we don't have to go further into explaining that. That tells us how they view the future of solar. And of course, he mentioned that the Philippines, and we know this, has a lot of potential for renewable energy. Bert Dalusong gave us a very encouraging fact that renewables might be variable, but they are not intermittent. And he said that solar for Luzon and Visayas are generally constant. And therefore, this argument that renewables are intermittent, he just struck that down. And so, again, why not go stronger into renewables? And then he mentioned some examples of how the renewable technologies have become more efficient. Our Attorney Cerezo gave us the roadmap, meaning, or specifically, that we are targeting 35% renewables in 2030 and 50% in 2040. Notwithstanding Bert's going back in time, saying that we did have already a 52% renewables in the 1980s. But then maybe one thing is that we really had a lower energy need, but well, we're talking percentage, so he has a point. Attorney Cerezo also enumerated the policies that give incentives to investment in renewables, and other programs like the green energy option for businesses and the one-stop shop, virtual not one-stop shop for investors. So all of these give us encouragement. But one important thing that Ambassador Melvin gave was, we have many Philippine laws, but as we all know, implementation is sorely lacking. I hope that the policies that Attorney Cerezo mentioned today will be implemented faster. And another that he mentioned, that he pointed to, was in Denmark, the development of renewable energy has been because of the consensus among the populace to go renewable. And this means a lot of dialogue, a lot of argumentation if needed, and seeing all the points of view, all the aspects of production and views, that we move as a nation. But as he pointed out, and as we know, one administration will go this way, the next administration will go another way, because there was no consensus in the first place. If there is consensus, we just continue with the plan, and we'll get somewhere. But without that, we won't. We will be static. So, and another thing that he mentioned was, no energy source is perfect. There will always be advantages and disadvantages for any source. Sometimes the deniers of renewable energy give the objections. Like there's a lot of waste also for solar energy, the batteries, etc. But yeah, you have to weigh the advantages and disadvantages of each source, and come to the most the optimum. And Bert, I think, also emphasized that fact. And so we are glad that we had this forum, and we're glad that some were devil's advocates about climate change, about nuclear. We need more discussions like this, so that we see all points of view, and we hopefully will come to a consensus. And that will be so that we will have a framework that we will continue using, and developing the perfect plan for the Philippines. So thank you, Bert Dalusong, Attorney Cerezo, and of course, Ambassador Melvin, for giving us so much to chew on and so much information and enlightenment. Thank you. We hope to see all of you. And thank you, everyone, for coming and participating in this forum. We hope to see you in future Kamayan sessions. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you very much. And now we're about to say goodbye. David, last words?
Yeah.
Huling habilin.
I think, yeah, thank you, Marie, and thank you, Dr. Gino. I think the lesson here that I heard from our speakers is really the energy, renewable energy issue is a lot more complex than what everyone is thinking about. I think there's a need to educate the public more about the efficiency of renewable energy. And as I said before on the chat box about nuclear energy, that one of the major problems really in the Philippines is the efficiency of government in implementing the laws, no? Especially on cases of security when it comes to, for example, nuclear or other renewable energy sources. uh, if the government will be more efficient, sabi nga nung natatandaan ko, high school pa ako or college, nagsabi na magagaling tayo sa theory and everything, magsusulat ng batas, but when it comes to implementation, mukhang doon tayo nagkakaproblema. And I think that's the focus that we need to really do. So forums like this is very important, and at the same time, doing it as well and implementing it on the ground is very, very important as well. Siguro, if we can start doing renewable on our own homes, no? Using solar, other energy, let's do it. Let's start from ourselves and our home. Marie?
As Nina says, consensus is so important. Do you know that that's why Kamayan is named Kamayan? It's not only because Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum was held at Kamayan Restaurant, no? When we were doing face-to-face forums. But because Ding and the founders, Ding and Ding Reyes and Vic Milan and Vic Villavicencio were thinking, Kamayan means, you shake on it. There's a consensus. You get together, you shake on it, and meaning you agree. So parang that's really what we need in everything that we do. If we like in Ako Ang Bukas, di ba? Kaya sabi natin movement, for whole of country movement. If you have everyone on board, then you cannot fail. So possible or not possible, we only need to have consensus, and everything will move forward. And I want to thank everyone, as Nina said. Thank you very much for joining us. This is the last of the 2023 series. We will see you again next year. Tagal, no? And I hope
January 19,
I
2024.
wish you all a blessed and joyful Christmas. And I hope the human race will be kinder and more caring to our Mother Earth in the coming year. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year,
Tandaan
everyone.
natin, ako ang bukas.
The next Kamayan is on January 19th. Okay?
2024.
Please be there. We'll
Happy
see
holidays,
you.
everyone, and happy weekend. Maraming salamat po from all of
Maligayang
us at
Pasko!
Green Convergence. Thank you po.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Makakalikasang Pasko. Bye po.
Salamat po.
Salamat.
Thank you.
Thank you.